I was merely a good-for-nothing, who spent 100,000 years cultivating, before finally ascending to the immortal realm. Yet the day of my ascension sent shockwaves throughout the entire immortal realm. Countless peak-level experts scrambled to emerge from their seclusion, and even the ancient ancestors who dominated various regions personally came out of seclusion, all to ensure they arrived in time to welcome me. For someone ascending from the lower realms like myself, it was because, back when I reached the tribulation transcendent stage and prepared to ascend, my wretched system informed me that I was required to refine my chi for another 100,000 years before ascension would be permitted. And so, for those 100,000 years, I could only watch as my disciples ascended one by one, dominating the upper realm and becoming formidable overlords in their own right. Even the golden dog that used to guard my gate transformed into a demon and ascended as a demon emperor, while I could not sense even the slightest omen of my own ascension. Fortunately, after 100,000 years, my cultivation base had become so profoundly powerful that this world could no longer contain my strength, and only then was I reluctantly permitted to ascend. However, upon arriving in the immortal realm, I was struck dumb. The scenery before me appeared entirely too ordinary, differing by a vast margin from the immortal realm I had envisioned. Could it be that I have not yet successfully ascended? I turned to inquire of the middle-aged man standing nearby. May I ask, is this the immortal realm? To my surprise, he did not deign to answer my question. Instead, he demanded that I help him bring his young mistress out. I stood there, bewildered, as I still did not understand whether or not I had truly ascended. Yet, upon turning around, I discovered a young woman drifting aimlessly on the surface of the water. Looking closely, I saw she bore many wounds, so I reached out and carried her ashore. I know you are in a hurry, but pray, remain calm. All those who have just ascended share this confusion. You need not doubt whether you have ascended successfully or not, for this is not the immortal realm, but the spirit realm. That pool is a spirit transformation pond. Those who ascend appear randomly at one of these ponds. The pond water will temper your mortal body. Have you not realized that the energy within your body has already transformed into spiritual power? Upon hearing this, I hurriedly checked the state of my body. Well, this is quite interesting. The intensity of my power has increased countless times compared to before my ascension. That reminds me, wasn't it said that those who ascend appear randomly at the spirit transformation pool? Then how did you all know that your young miss would appear in this very pool? This place is of great importance, as it requires the positioning coordinates of the Shenyang Qingdao. Why have none of my disciples arrived here? Our Donghua planet possesses a unique blood guidance technique. Cultivators from other planets are fundamentally unable to learn it. By the way, which planet do you hail from? Our master instructed us to receive someone here. I do not know which planet it is, but the continent is called the Juxiao continent. I share that sentiment. How could such a coincidence occur in the vast 9 provinces? It just so happens that I have encountered the person my master, Tian Moshuan, wished for me to find. If you are interested, you could join our Tiangang sword sect as an administrator, or even as an honored guest. Since I have nowhere else to go for the time being, joining a sect and holding a position would suit me well. I shall first assess the strength of the spirit realm, and, while I am at it, search for my disciples. Rest assured, brother, the sect master of our Dalao sword sect is Zhao Mingyu. Her talent in the way of the sword is truly exceptional. With her foreign gold sword technique, she has rendered the land within 1,000 miles completely silent. She is truly a powerhouse of a supreme sect. Upon hearing these words, my heart began to race. Zhao Mingyue and the foreign gold sword technique. Is this not that chubby little disciple of mine? The one with the remarkable talent for swordsmanship from 13,000 years ago? Even this sword technique was something I had casually created back in those days. Upon returning to the sect, I confirmed that she is indeed that same chubby girl from the past. Is this not the divine weapon? The one I personally forged and gifted to her for her self-protection? Breaking the chains. What are you doing, brat? That is the most precious treasure of our sect master. Every single day she comes here and stares at it in a trance for a long time. Ordinary disciples are not permitted to touch this. I looked at the broken boundary chain and nodded. Images flashed through my mind. The young, chubby girl who loved watermelon, always trailing behind me. Let us go, brother. I shall take you to settle into your quarters first. Once our young mistress awakens, she will take you both to meet the great elder. I acknowledged with a nod. Glancing around, I asked casually, your sect does not seem to have many disciples, does it? Are you looking down on our Tiangang sword sect again? Currently, all the disciples have gone out to search for someone. Those who remain to guard the sect are naturally few. Even the sect master has personally gone out to find this person. Just what kind of important figure are you searching for? It is no harm to tell you. It is Jiyu Chengyin, who ascended from the blue planet. He is the master of our sect master. It seems Zhao Mingyu saw my name on the ascension rankings and dispatched her disciples to find me. But when it comes to this blue planet, could it be the 9 heavens continent? At that same moment, a graceful figure glided through the air. The sect master had returned. The jade talisman before us belongs to the great elder of the Tiangang sword sect. Years ago, when Xiao Mingyu founded the sect, she participated as well. She is also a sworn sister of Xiao Mingyu. I heard that yesterday, your family also had a young woman ascend here. The process was smooth, and there were no unforeseen accidents. It was only that she suffered damage to her meridians when struck by the lightning tribulation. I have already administered an elixir to her. She should awaken in a few hours. And what of the other person? Where did they come from? They did not come from the blue planet. But that is to be expected. The 9 continents are vast. For someone to appear at the spirit transformation pool within the jurisdiction of the Tiangang sword sect, the probability is infinitesimal. I truly envy you of Donghua Star for possessing the blood guidance technique. It is a pity that cultivators from other planets are unable to practice it due to their constitutions and bloodlines. I heard that today, at the spirit transformation pool you are responsible for guarding, there was more than one person who ascended. That is correct. One person was precisely located and retrieved using the blood guidance technique of Donghua Star, that is, the young mistress. As for the other individual, I have already inquired. They did not come from the blue planet. Xiao Mingyu's Tuli Moxuan realized it was time to retreat, quickly slipping out of the great hall. Only then did it occur to him that he still did not know the name of the lad who had just ascended. Inside the great hall, only Xiao Mingyu and Yu Fu remained. In truth, Yu Fu was not from the blue planet. She and Xiao Mingyu had ascended from the same spirit transformation pool. Mingyu, do not be overly distressed. Since your master has ascended to the spirit realm, there will surely be an opportunity to meet again. But he has just ascended, and is only at the true immortal stage. What if he encounters some unforeseen danger? That is unlikely. Your sect's scale is vast. Surely everyone took notice of the immortal ranking yesterday. Your martial brothers, sisters, and sect kin will certainly find him. I hope so. In the coming days, continue to increase the patrol personnel at all spirit transformation pools within the jurisdiction of the Tiangang sword sect. Master, I have been alone in the lower realms for 100,000 years. I do not wish for him to be all alone when he finally ascends. By the way, the Kangfeng Pavilion sent people again a few days ago, but I refused them. I only fear that the so-called Sword Emperor will lose his patience and come to provoke us. At such a sensitive time, most of the disciples of the Tiangang sword sect have been deployed to patrol the spirit transformation pools. We are short-handed within the sect. That Sword Emperor, is someone of his caliber even worthy of the title? It is nothing more than a self-proclaimed hollow vanity. When it comes to the Dafao of the sword, no matter how vast the 9 continents of the spirit realm may be, no one can ever compare to my master. I recall how in those years, master would casually create a sword manual that was enough for us disciples to study for hundreds of years. His level of mastery in the sword is not something ordinary people like us could ever hope to compare to. Even if your master has just ascended, he is only at the true immortal stage. Just how high could his sword talent possibly be? She had no idea. While I was still in the lower realms, I had already relied on my own strength to maximize my sword talent attributes. Not just the Tao of the sword alchemy, artifact refining, and array formations all reached the peak level. And right at this moment, outside the bamboo forest by the cliff, I am lying on a reclining chair, legs crossed, enjoying life. Having spent 100,000 years in the lower realms, felt like being imprisoned. I could never escape, but now that I have reached this vast world, there are countless wonders waiting for me to explore. And, of course, the group of disciples whom I personally sent up here. Boredom led to restlessness, so I brought out my system to study it, recalling those 100,000 years in the lower realm. Initially, the system's check-in feature would grant random talents, gifting me cultivation, medicinal pills, and dharma treasures. But subsequently, my talents reached their absolute maximum level. I possessed more magical treasures than I could ever use. My cultivation base ascended to the pinnacle of my previous life, so the system ceased gifting me anything further. I opened the system interface to inspect my current realm. It was all happening a bit too quickly. I had yet to properly adapt. Profound energy surged and billowed within my body. It acted like an inexhaustible reservoir, automatically converting into spiritual energy and rising at an astonishing pace. I had no need to cultivate. Simply checking in each day granted me additional spiritual energy. It was truly an affront to the heavenly Tao itself. But why hasn't Shumo Xuan arrived yet? I wonder if that little fatty, Ming Yu, has returned? Unable to sit still, I wandered toward the martial arts arena and stopped before that realm-breaking ruler. An instrument of slaughter with limitless power in the lower realm, yet here, it is likely inferior to even the lowest grade spirit treasure. Xiao Ming Yu must have discarded it, which is why it remains planted here in the arena. Suddenly, a voice as clear as a mountain spring echoed from behind me. I turned around to see a great beauty dressed in robes of light violet silk. Her status within the Tiangang sword sect was undoubtedly high. To you, who just ascended today, You must be the other person Shu Moxuan mentioned. My name is Yu Fu, Grand Elder of the Tiangang Sword Sect. It is a pleasure to meet you. Grand Elder, having just ascended, you are likely unaccustomed to things here. In time, you will find your footing. Our Tiangang Sword Sect may not be the hegemon of Yu Prefecture, but within 1,000 miles we hold a respectable reputation. You may stay here for the time being. Once you have acclimated to the spirit realm, should you wish to depart, we will not stand in your way. By the way, what is your name? I nearly blurted out my real name. With a quick turn of thought, I changed my tone. Qinghe. Seeing me staring fixedly at the realm-breaking ruler, Yu Fu cautioned, "This is the realm-breaking ruler. Although it is not considered a great treasure in the spirit realm, it is of vital importance to our sect. As a guest elder, you enjoy a great deal of freedom in your daily life. However, keep this in mind. Do not touch this object casually. It is the sect master's most cherished possession." Seeing the serious expression on her face as she warned me, I felt a secret sense of delight in my heart. After all, it proved that the little fatty still held our past memories in high regard. One early morning, the martial arts arena was crowded, bustling like a lively festival. Xiao Mingyu sat enthroned upon the sect master's seat on the high platform, observing the crowd below with an expression of profound sorrow and disappointment. Reports from the disciples stationed on watch last night had been delivered. Yet there was still no news of me. Although she had successfully welcomed a few who had ascended and recruited them, they held only the status of guest elders and could depart at any moment. After issuing a few instructions and bestowing the status of guest elders upon them, Xiao Mingyu declared the meeting adjourned, whispered a few words to the jade talisman beside her, and departed. The remaining elders were all female cultivators. Seeing the despondent look on Xiao Mingyu's face, their hearts could not help but ache for her. Yet there was nothing more they could do, for yesterday, they had turned the entire region upside down. No news meant no news. The Ascension Board does not deceive. Yesterday, the Heaven Steel Sword sect had scoured every spirit transformation pool within their territory, yet they had found no trace of the person. This could only mean one thing. My point of ascension was not in this region. At this moment, I was standing in a daze beside the martial arts arena, having been pulled here by Shu Moxuan. Beside him stood the young woman Song Qinglan. Her injuries had healed. But I, on the other hand, was lost in my own thoughts. I narrowed my eyes, gazing toward the high platform in front of the arena, filled with joy. At the figure sitting upon that high platform, her face had hardly changed at all over the past 13,000 years, remaining the same as the lively, mischievous little girl before her ascension. Between her brows, however, there was now an indescribable weariness and the mark of world-worn experience. Seeing this, a pang of heartache welled up within me. Remembering the years back in the lower realm, this girl, Xiao Mingyu, never knew how to take care of herself, and after ascending to the spirit realm, shouldering the burden of such a vast sect all by herself, she must have endured a great deal of hardship. As I was lost in nostalgia, Song Qinglan noticed I hadn't paid her any mind for a long time, and immediately looked displeased. She pouted and grumbled. "What kind of look is that? You've been staring at the sect master for so long. Your eyes are practically glued to her. That is our sect master. You look quite dignified, yet I never expected you to be such a lecher." I hurriedly withdrew my gaze, feeling incredibly embarrassed. And before I could even open my mouth to offer an explanation, a peal of loud laughter echoed from the 9 heavens. Ha ha. Hearing the laughter, Xiao Mingyu looked up toward the sky. Sword Emperor Qin Moxia, the master of the Hidden Wind Pavilion from 10,000 years ago, a man who located 100 miles from the Tiangang Sword Sect, the Kangfeng Pavilion was established. By all rights, the Tiangang Sword Sect should not have sat idly by, but Xiao Mingyue and her elders were all women, and by nature, they preferred to avoid conflict, choosing to turn a blind eye to the situation. Yet, no one could have foreseen the rapid expansion of the Kangfeng Pavilion. Qin Mo Xiaoyin set his sights upon the exquisite sword manual belonging to Xiao Mingyu. He did not merely covet the manual, but also desired the woman herself, under the pretense of seeking a sword cultivator Dao companion. He intended to merge the Kangfeng Pavilion with the Tiangang Sword Sect. I frowned as I listened. This shameless rogue. Whether my little disciple chooses to marry him or not is her own personal affair. Yet, according to Mo Xuan, it was clear that Xiao Mingyu was far from willing. This Qin Mo Xiaoyin is like a persistent plague, impossible to shake off. And he even has the audacity to call himself the Sword Emperor of the Self-Wind, despite possessing the greasy, bloated appearance of a middle-aged man. He is truly devoid of shame. Yet in truth, there was little that could be done to stop him. The strength of this Qin Mo Xiaoyin is by no means trivial, and the disciples of the Kangfeng Pavilion are notoriously combative, making the Tiangang Sword Sect hesitant to provoke a direct conflict with them. I nodded inwardly. This was indeed typical of Xiao Mingyu. If she did not consider her own well-being, she at least had to ensure a path of survival for the disciples under her care. Is this Qin Mo Xiaoyin truly so formidable? Nonsense. It is said that his cultivation realm has already reached the 5th heavenly layer of the upper immortal stage. What is the upper immortal realm? It sounds quite impressive, does it not? The upper immortal realm follows the true immortal stage. Upon hearing this, the corner of my mouth twitched. I had expected something far more imposing. The upper immortal stage follows the true immortal stage? After waking up from my sleep last night, I had already reached the 9th heavenly layer of the true immortal stage. I am on the verge of reaching the peak of the true immortal realm. In a few days, I might even break through to the upper immortal realm directly. And what about Xiao Mingyu? What is her current realm? She is at the 3rd heavenly layer of the upper immortal stage. I nearly burst into laughter upon hearing this. Xiao Mingyue ascended 13,005 years ago, and yet she has only reached the 3rd heavenly layer of the upper immortal stage to this day. I ascended only yesterday. Yet today I am already nearing the pinnacle of the true immortal realm. At this moment, Shin Maxiao approached with a smirk, attempting to strike up a conversation. Minguyet, it has been a long time. How have you been lately? Are we even close enough for you to address me that way? Xiao Mingyu did not even bother to rise from her seat. She rolled her eyes and uttered a dismissive remark just to end the conversation. Having failed to locate her master, Xiao Mingyu was already filled with frustration. Qin Maxiao's mouth twitched at the cold reception, but he was thick-skinned enough to immediately change the subject. No matter. I come today with no ulterior motives. After all, our two sects share a long-standing friendship. I simply wish to find someone to engage in a spar, a discussion of the dago? Or do you truly wish to cross blades with me? Do you honestly believe I fear you? Although her cultivation realm was indeed inferior to that of Qin Maxiao, the gap between them within the same realm was not insurmountable. Furthermore, thanks to the peerless golden sword technique I imparted to her, she had enough to compensate for the disparity in their cultivation levels. If they were to truly fight, it remained to be seen who would emerge victorious. No, what would the two of us have to discuss? These individuals beside me are all disciples and guest elders of my Kengfeng pavilion. Let them amuse themselves with your people for a while. Standing within the crowd, I began to find this rather interesting. I asked Shu Maoxian. In terms of sword intent, I could go up as your guest elder. You have the qualifications. But I advise against it. Do not go there to throw your life away. Stepping onto that stage will only make you a target for them to vent their strength. Upon hearing this, I curled my lips in a silent smile. You are quite direct. My current strength may indeed be lacking, but if we are comparing sword intent, you are dealing with a max-level player here. Qin Maxiao spoke up once more. Our Kengfeng pavilion, though not as profoundly deep as your sect, I have absolute faith in my disciples. How about we place a wager today? What kind of wager? Let us keep the elders out of this, and let the disciples and guest elders decide the outcome. If my people win, you must become my Dafio partner. The Tiangang sword sect is to be merged into Kangfeng Pavilion. Rest assured, I will not let your disciples suffer. From now on, your monthly stipends shall be doubled. These words were clearly intended for the ears of the Tiangang sword sect disciples. It must be admitted, this is a remarkably cunning maneuver. With the Tiangang sword sect possessing so many members, not everyone is entirely loyal to the sect. Upon hearing that Kangfeng Pavilion is prepared to offer double the compensation once Qin Moqiao departs, who knows how many people will be tempted to defect. By then, the strength of Kangfeng Pavilion will be overwhelming. Even if Xiao Mingyu wins the wager, she will have lost the hearts of her people. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists, knowing full well that Qin Moqiao was scheming against her, yet she could not immediately devise a countermeasure. Before she could even speak, a young man suddenly surged forth from the crowd. The long sword in his hand was already drawn from its scabbard. Do you truly think you can provoke and insult the sect master of our Tiangang sword sect, you old apothecary? Zhan Wuqi, do not be rash. Yufu was so frightened that her face turned deathly pale. This Zhan Wuqi is her own personal disciple. His talent is indeed not bad, and he has already grasped the sword intent, having stepped into the true immortal realm 3 years ago. However, when all is said and done, he is still young and reckless. Having never weathered the storms of the world, he rushes out like this. Is that not effectively accepting this challenge on behalf of the sect? Standing within the crowd, I watched this scene and shook my head in dismay, silently mocking him in my heart. This boy is truly all brawn and no brain. A classic example of one who possesses courage but lacks strategy, easily led by the nose. Unfortunately, Zhan Wuqi was burning with fervor and did not look back. Master, rest assured, our Tiangang sword sect has no desire to join this Kangfeng Pavilion, he declared. He took a single step forward, and immediately, countless golden sword auras erupted from around his body. The gale shrieked continuously, and behind Qin Moqiao, a young man in white robes let out a faint chuckle. Xiao Sai leaped into the center of the courtyard, saying, I have long heard of your reputation. Under Elder Yufu of the Tiang sword sect, there exists a genius who comprehended the Tiang sword shadow. Today happens to be a fitting time for me to seek counsel from the Tangfeng Pavilion's Qin Yishen. I humbly request your guidance. Having said that, He gave the other side no chance to refuse, directly unleashing his sword intent to clash head-on with Xian Wuji. This Qin Yishen is the biological son of Qin Motiao. It is said that at 300 years of age, he mastered the Kalpa fire sword intent. At 400 years, he underwent the heavenly tribulation. At 800, he reached the fifth heaven of the true immortal realm. By the age of 1005, he had already surged to the eighth heaven of the true immortal realm. He is truly a monster of talent, possessing a formidable sword intent that does not pale in comparison to Zhan Wuji's heaven steel sword shadow. Within the courtyard, Zhan Wuji began to tremble. The gale of sword qi surrounding him descended into chaos, completely spiraling out of control. Looking back at Qin Yishen, his demeanor remained composed, with a faint smile still lingering at the corners of his mouth. High above in the heavens, Qin Motiao's laughter grew increasingly smug. Xiao Mingyu gripped the armrests of her chair until her knuckles turned white. She let out a soft sigh, knowing that Zhan Wuji was finished. The following second, Zhan Wuji suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. The sword intent surrounding him shattered instantly, and his body collapsed to the ground. Qin Yishen retracted his sword intent, uttering the word conceded with casual ease, yet it struck like a blade piercing Zhan Wuji's heart. Yu Fu flashed forward in an instant, rushing to support her disciple. She probed his pulse, and her expression darkened immediately. The meridians within Wuji's body were severed, and his danshin was in complete ruins. This Qin Yishen's methods are truly ruthless. Yet despite his arrogance, he possesses the genuine capital to be proud, given his current cultivation realm and age. His insights into sword intent are truly rare to behold. It is no wonder Qin Motiao dared to bring people here to openly provoke the sect. Zhu Moxuan sighed, noting that Wuji was too impetuous. This time, the Heaven Steel Sword sect has suffered a great loss of face. Song Qinglan replied with unconcealed resentment. Is that damned sword intent really so formidable? With so many disciples in our sect, is there truly no one who can subdue him? That is not entirely the case, but there are few disciples within the sect who have reached the true immortal realm. Wuji's sword intent could already be ranked among the top 3. Since he has been defeated so miserably, anyone else who steps up will merely be throwing their life away. As for the guest retainers, do not even bother expecting anything from them. They are here only to collect their stipends. They are content to watch the show, but risking their lives is out of the question. On the stage, Qin Yishen continued his provocation. What is the matter? Does no one else dare to come forward? Is Zhan Wuji's Heaven Steel Sword intent truly nothing more than this? Surely this does not represent the standard of the Heaven Steel Sword sect's disciples, does it? Xiao Mingyu and the elders stood by, their faces growing progressively more grim with each passing moment. It was true that there remained disciples with sword intent, stronger than Zhan Wuji's. However, when faced with Qin Yishen, not a single one possessed the certainty of victory. We cannot simply continue to send our disciples up only to be crippled one by one. Qin Motiao spoke up at this moment. Since no one is willing to engage in a Daoyo discussion, then regarding this wager. Before his words could even finish, they were interrupted by a voice from the crowd. If this is a wager, how can you only speak of what happens if you win? Is that not merely daylight robbery? What if you people lose? How will that be accounted for? What do you intend to do? As these words were spoken, they immediately drew the attention of everyone present. I donned the mask I had just purchased at the market, then stepped out from the crowd, one measured pace at a time. Fearing for my safety, Mo Xuan and Song Qinglan attempted to pull me back, but it was already too late. It is over. Has this boy lost his mind? Lan, you are looking at a dead man. I took a deep breath, drawing in a gust of cold air to steady my nerves. Song Qinglan cried out, desperately urging me to return. I did not turn back. I only glanced at Qin Yishen, who was radiating arrogance. He surveyed me with the gaze one would reserve for a corpse, a sneer of undisguised mockery tugging at the corner of his mouth, while the mocking laughter of the Kangfang Pavilion disciples erupted all around. I stopped before him, standing silently at a distance of 3 zang. Qin Yishen tilted his head to observe me, gesturing with his hand toward Zhan Wuji, who was still coughing up blood in the distance. A mere retainer who has just ascended. Have you not seen his fate? His face was etched with triumph. I remained silent, merely raising my right hand slightly. Qin Yishen froze for a moment, then burst into loud laughter. He laughed because I had not even bothered to draw my sword, yet intended to face his karma fire sword with bare hands. No sooner had he finished speaking than a brilliant, searing crimson sword aura erupted from his body. The temperature of the entire martial arts arena soared instantly. The observing disciples retreated in waves, and gasps of shock filled the air. I felt the heat washing over my face, yet my heart remained entirely unruffled. After all, having spent 100,000 years in the lower realms, I have seen too much. Seeing me remain unmoved, a flicker of confusion crossed Qin Yishen's eyes. He roared, and his sword aura transformed into a fire dragon that surged toward me. Xiao Mingyu suddenly rose from her seat, a cry of alarm escaping her lips, but it was already too late to intervene. Song Qinglan covered her eyes tightly, not daring to look any longer. Just as everyone believed I was about to be reduced to ashes, I merely lifted a finger. An invisible surge of energy erupted from my fingertip. There was no grandiose sword intent, nor a blinding display of light, yet that majestic fire dragon, burning with immense power, instantly shattered in midair as easily as a soap bubble being pricked. The triumphant expression on Qin Yishen's face froze in an instant, and before he could even react, that pulse of energy plunged directly into his dantian. A dull thud echoed as he collapsed weakly to the ground, staring down at his lower abdomen, his eyes filled with utter disbelief. I lowered my hand and looked at him calmly. The entire arena fell into a deathly silence before erupting in shock. Behind me, a sudden thud rang out as Shu Moxuan's eyes rolled back and he fell stiffly backward. Song Qinglan scrambled in a panic, catching him while crying out in alarm. On the high platform, Zhao Mingyu gazed at me, her expression dazed. She stared intently at my back, her lips trembling slightly. That familiar silhouette. Why is it so similar to the person deep within my memories? Yet, she dared not acknowledge it, nor did she dare to believe. Qin Matiao landed beside Qin Yishen and reached out to examine him. His expression darkened like pouring water. When he looked up at me, the murderous intent in his eyes had nearly condensed into a physical force. Gritting his teeth, he spat out each word. "You dare to harm my son? You will pay with your life." I met his gaze, my expression remaining tranquil. He suddenly stepped forward, the overwhelming pressure of a fifth heaven superior immortal descending upon us, causing the very ground of the martial arena to tremble violently, forcing many disciples to their knees under the crushing weight. Xiao Mingyue dashed forward to shield me. She challenged, "Qin Matiao, what do you think you are doing? The Dadao discussion has ended. Your son's skills were inferior. He has no one to blame but himself." Qin Matiao did not even look at her, keeping his eyes fixed solely on me. I stepped out from behind Xiao Mingyu to stand shoulder to shoulder with her. "If your son is incapable, you are welcome to come up here yourself." The entire arena collectively gasped. Xiao Mingyu gripped my wrist tightly, hurriedly trying to stop me. She feared I had lost my mind, for the man before us was a fifth heaven superior immortal. I turned to look at her familiar face, remembering the chubby girl from 13,000 years ago. In my heart, I spoke only. Xiao Mingyu froze, her eyes slightly reddened. In that fleeting moment, she almost uttered that name, yet she restrained herself, watching me in silence. Qin Matixiao, consumed by rage, stepped forward as his sword intent soared toward the heavens. He declared his intent to test the skills of this guest retainer. I released Zhao Mingyu's hand and stepped forward. Behind me, Song Qinglan wept and cursed, calling me a scoundrel. Before she could finish, she was pinned to the ground by the unconscious form of Zhu Moxuan. The atmosphere in the martial arts arena reached a peak of unbearable tension. Everyone held their breath as they watched the standoff between myself and Qin Matixiao. At that very instant, an aged voice echoed from the horizon, and a streak of light descended upon the scene in a heartbeat. Landing in the center of the arena was an elder with white hair, trailed by several unfathomable experts. Xiao Mingyu's expression shifted. It was an elder from the Qingshuan immortal sect. Qin Matixiao was overjoyed and bowed in respect, crying out, "This madman destroyed my son's dantian. I humbly beseech the elder to intervene." The elder waved his hand and scrutinized me from head to toe, his gaze flickering with uncertainty as if calculating a hidden motive. After a long moment, the elder spoke slowly. "Are you willing to join the Qingshuan immortal sect?" As these words fell, the entire crowd erupted in shock, and the color drained from Xiao Mingyu's face. Qin Matixiao stood petrified on the spot, unable to believe his ears, while the disciples of the Tiangang sword sect exchanged bewildered glances. Uncertain of how to react, I quietly observed this elder who had appeared so abruptly, secretly pondering what schemes he might be harboring. Moments ago he sought my life, yet now he asks for my allegiance. This sudden reversal was so swift that it left everyone utterly stunned. Song Qinglan supported the fainted Shu Moxuan, her mouth agape in such surprise that she forgot even to scream. On the high platform, Yufu looked at me with a complex gaze, appearing to reassess everything. This newly ascended guest retainer, Zhao Mingyu, pressed her lips tightly, her fingertips turning white from the pressure. She feared that I would simply walk away, yet she feared even more that I might truly be her master. The martial arts arena fell into a deathly silence. Everyone awaited my answer, and I offered a faint, indifferent smile to the elder of the Qingshuan immortal sect. "Does the Qingshuan immortal sect possess anything worthy of my entry?" The elder's expression shifted slightly, clearly not expecting such a retort from me. Qin Matixiao seized the opportunity to leap forward and condemn me. "You brat, you are nothing but a newly ascended true immortal. It is the fortune of your ancestors that you are being invited to the Qingshuan immortal sect." I ignored him entirely, keeping my gaze locked firmly upon the elder. The elder pondered for a moment, then offered, I can appoint you as an honorary elder. You may choose any resources or cultivation techniques you desire." Such generous terms caused everyone present to gasp in astonishment. The surrounding disciples watched with eyes burning red from envy. They wished for nothing more than to take my place and accept immediately. Xiao Mingyu trembled slightly, her eyes flickering with a hint of despair. I turned my head to look at her. Her face was filled with panic and unease. My heart warmed suddenly, remembering the chubby little girl from the past. Whenever I emerged from seclusion, she would look at me with that same expectant gaze, terrified that I might no longer need her. I withdrew my gaze, looking at the elder of the Qingxuan immortal sect. I slowly shook my head. "I will not go." The entire venue erupted into an uproar once more, even more intense than before. Qin Moxia glared at me, as if looking at a complete fool. The expression of the Qingxuan immortal sect elder darkened significantly. "Do you realize the consequences of this refusal? I am merely an honorary guest of the Tiangang sword sect. Having ascended only a day ago, I have no desire to go anywhere else." The old man stared at me for a long while before finally letting out a cold snort and flicking his sleeves in departure. Before leaving, he dropped a single sentence that caused Shinmoxia's face to pale instantly. "From this day forth, the Qingxuan immortal sect will no longer interfere in the affairs of Tangfeng Pavilion." Shinmoxia panicked and rushed to catch up in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, but he was shoved aside by those following the elder. He scrambled up from the ground, his face mask of pure despair. Without the backing of the Qingxuan immortal sect, he was nothing. From now on, he would find it difficult to act with impunity. Xiao Mingyu looked at him coldly, her eyes devoid of the slightest trace of pity. I stood in place, observing the chaotic scene unfold. Qin Moxia turned to look at me with a gaze filled with deep resentment. Yet he dared not strike, only grit his teeth before carrying his child away. The Tangfeng disciples slunk away behind him, their faces ashen. On the martial arts arena, thunderous cheers erupted into the sky. The Tiangang sword sect disciples crowded around me, jumping for joy. Song Qinglan pushed through the throng, rushed up to me, and with reddened eyes, landed a punch on my chest. "You truly scared me to death." I smiled, remaining silent. Raising my head to the high platform, I saw Xiao Mingyu still watching me in a daze. Tears welled in her eyes, and her lips trembled. But in the end, she asked nothing, and turned to leave. Yu Fu followed closely behind her, leaving me standing there all alone. Shumaxuan finally regained consciousness. He crawled over, clutched my leg, and wailed loudly. "From this day forth, you are my true elder brother." Song Qinglan scoffed and kicked him away. I looked in the direction Xiao Mingyu had just departed and thought to myself, "Little fatty, do not be anxious. Your master is still right by your side." As I turned, I realized that Yu Fu had returned at some point. She stood not far away, her gaze complex and filled with scrutiny. I pretended not to notice and walked straight toward my quarters. The martial arts arena had once again become boisterous. Qin Motiao and 3 elders at the 7th heaven of the upper immortal realm had reappeared. He burned with killing intent, demanding that today's debate on the Dao be made official, a battle to the death. Xiao Mingyu sat in the sectmaster's seat, her brows tightly furrowed, while Yu Fu stood beside her, her face filled with anxiety. As I pushed my way into the crowd, Shu Moxuan leaned in close and whispered, "Qin Moqiao has come prepared this time. Those 3 old men are all formidable experts." I nodded to signal that I understood. Qin Moqiao spoke, his voice echoing throughout the entire martial arts arena. "The debate yesterday was my son's failure, and I accept the loss. But today I shall personally challenge the sword Dao of the Tiangang sword sect. The loser must leave Luo Prefecture." He was clearly staking the entire foundation of the sect on this wager, causing an uproar among the spectators. Xiao Mingyu remained silent. She did not fear Qin Moqiao, but she feared bringing disaster upon her disciples. Seeing this, Qin Moqiao let out a mocking laugh. "Are the trash of the Tiangang sword sect only capable of hiding behind a woman? Where is that arrogant guest elder from yesterday? Why have you become a turtle, hiding in its shell today?" Yu Fu could not hold back and prepared to step forward, but Qin Moqiao glanced at her with utter contempt. He declared that Yu Fu lacked the qualifications to face him. The one he sought was me. Every gaze turned toward me in unison. I adjusted my mask and stepped leisurely out of the crowd. Xiao Mingyue intended to stop me, but I shook my head at her and advanced to stand about. He scanned me from head to toe, saying he would spare my life, but today, that luck will not be on your side. Spare me the nonsense. Empty words are useless in a duel. Let us speak with our blades. He challenged me to a sword match, where the first to retreat admits defeat. I nodded, agreeing. Qin Maxiao took a step back, and this time, he unleashed countless sword shadows. The entire martial arts arena was stained in a blazing, fiery red. The surrounding disciples recoiled in terror as the intense heat scorched their very skin. Xiao Mingyue stood up, intending to intervene, but was held back by Yu Fu. Let us see what he is capable of. I sensed that he is no simple opponent. I stood silently in place, feeling the sweltering waves of heat. Qin Maxiao saw that I remained motionless. His expression darkened, and he let out a thunderous roar. He unleashed his calamity fire sword intent with all his might, and the crimson sword quill transformed into a towering sea of flames, surging toward me. Wherever it passed, the ground cracked and the air warped. I did not move, instead slowly closing my eyes, as scenes from the last 100,000 years in the lower realms surfaced in my mind. The insights into the sword Tao I had gained from long years of meditation manifested one by one. I opened my eyes and calmly raised my right hand. In an instant, the world shifted, the heavens turned, and the clear sky suddenly plunged into darkness. A violent gale arose, and black clouds churned, as if the end of the world were descending. Qin Maxiao's sea of fire was crushed, flickering on the verge of collapse. It shattered into nothingness. His eyes widened, his face etched with utter disbelief. With a flick of my index finger, I struck the void, and behind me, countless golden lightning streaks suddenly appeared. They densely covered the firmament, blotting out half the sky, each ray of swordlight radiating a terrifying sword intent. "The 10,000 swords returned to the sect!" someone exclaimed in shock. Qin Maxiao's face turned deathly pale, his body trembling violently. Before this display, his calamity fire sword intent was like a firefly competing with the radiance of the moon. I pressed my finger downward toward Qin Maxiao. The swordlight filling the sky locked onto him, ready to erupt. He collapsed to his knees, utterly wretched. The crimson sword qui surrounding him shattered with a thunderous roar. He vanished with a graceful motion, only to vomit a mouthful of fresh blood. It stained the ground before him crimson. The entire arena fell into a deathly silence. One could have heard a pin drop, before the silence was shattered by a deafening eruption of gasps and clamor. Heavens! What manner of sword technique was that? It is truly terrifying. It completely pulverized Qin Moqiao's calamity fire sword intent. Qin Moqiao sprawled on the ground, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. He raised his head to look at me, his eyes filled with fear and bitter resentment. "This is impossible. It is absolutely impossible. You are merely a true immortal who has just ascended. How could you possess such monstrous attainments in the sword Tao?" I withdrew my hand. The sword light that filled the heavens slowly dissipated, and I looked upon him calmly, my heart devoid of any ripples. Qin Moqiao spat out another mouthful of blood, his face ashen like cold embers. The three elders behind him exchanged bewildered glances, not daring to step forward. Qin Moqiao struggled to his feet, staring at me intently. "Who exactly are you?" I did not answer, merely turning to walk away. As I passed Yufu, I noticed the gaze she held toward me had undergone a complete transformation. From her initial vigilance, it shifted into curiosity, and finally, into adoration. She bit her lip, her eyes misty, hesitating as if she wished to speak but held back. Song Qinglan cut in, leaning toward my ear to whisper, "Qinghe, have you become too arrogant? That was a sword emperor at the fifth heaven of the upper immortal realm. That display was excessive." I pushed her head away with one hand. "Do not let your imagination run wild." Shu Mokshuan lunged forward, hugging my leg and wailing loudly, "Big brother, from this day forth, I am your man." I kicked him away and told him to get lost. Xiao Mingyu stood upon the high platform, staring at me in a daze. Her eyes welled with tears, and her lips trembled violently. That silhouette, those movements, that demeanor, it was too similar. Truly too much like the person in her memories. Yet she dared not acknowledge it. 13,005 years is an eternity, far too long for her to believe that her master had truly returned. I looked up at her once, my heart aching slightly. Her familiar face was etched with torment and longing, yet I restrained myself and remained silent. Now is not the time. Qin Moqiao, supported by the three elders, retreated in a wretched state. Before leaving, he turned to glance at me one last time, his gaze burning with deep-seated hatred. I know this matter is far from over, but it matters not. The cheers in the arena were thunderous, piercing the very clouds. The disciples of the Tiangang sword sect surrounded me, looking at me as if I were a monster. Yufu pushed through the crowd, stopping directly before me. She blushed, her eyes shimmering with hesitation as she struggled to speak. Finally, she uttered but a single sentence. "I invite you to drink with me tonight." I was momentarily stunned. What could have possibly come over this girl? Song Qinglan, standing nearby, rolled her eyes with an expression of pure disdain. Shu Moxian hugged my leg, begging to be taken along, until I kicked him away. Yufu laughed, her eyes sparkling with affection. She explained that she intended to cook the meal herself this evening. Before I could even respond, Song Qinglan answered on my behalf. Yufu glanced at her, coldly remarking that she had not invited her. Song Qinglan stood frozen, her expression one of utter dejection. Yufu pulled me along, leading me directly toward her living quarters. From behind us came the frustrated cries of Song Qinglan and the mocking laughter of Shu Moxian. The setting sun descended, bathing the entire sect in a golden glow. I looked at the flushed maiden beside me, silently calculating her true intentions. Yufu suddenly came to a halt and turned to look at me. "Qinghe, did you know? You remind me of someone." I arched a brow, feigning confusion, as I asked if she meant the sect master's teacher. My heart skipped a beat, yet my expression remained perfectly composed, for only that person could have mentored someone like Mingyu and possessed such terrifying talent in the path of the sword. She was overthinking it, or so I hoped, but her gaze suggested she had already deduced the truth. I sighed inwardly. This girl was far too intelligent to be easily deceived. We arrived at her residence, a quiet and elegant courtyard. She asked me to wait in the courtyard while she went into the kitchen to busy herself. I reclined on a wooden chair, staring at the horizon in a daze, before opening the system to check my progress for the day. Congratulations to the host for completing the mission. Upon receiving the cultivation reward, a surge of warmth flooded my body, and my realm instantly shifted. At the peak of the true immortal stage, I was but one step away from the upper immortal stage. I smiled. It seems this system is actually quite reliable. By the time Yufu brought out the dishes, I had already finalized my breakthrough. Pouring 2 cups of wine under the moonlight, her face looked extraordinarily beautiful, still tinged with a soft crimson flush. She gazed at me intently for a long moment before suddenly speaking. "Qinghe, are you searching for someone?" I set my cup down and looked at her. "Yesterday you watched the sect master in a daze, and today you stared at her departing figure, lost in thought. Is the person you are searching for related to the sect master?" I remained silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Yes, but I cannot speak of it just yet. I will wait until you are able to tell me. But Qinghe, do you know? Mingyu has suffered greatly over these years. She has held the sect together on her own, all while continuing the search for her master. Whenever there is news on the immortal rankings, she goes to verify it personally. 13 years. She has never once given up." My hand, holding the wine cup, trembled slightly. A sense of deep heartache and remorse welled up within me. That chubby little girl has truly grown up, and has endured far too much hardship. I do not know who you are, but if you truly are that person, please reveal your identity to her soon. She is so exhausted. She needs someone to lean on. I remained silent for a long time before replying, "Understood." Yufu smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "It is getting late. You should return." I nodded, and left the small courtyard, stepping into the night. Walking under the moonlight, my heart could not find its peace. From behind came the melancholic voice of Yufu echoing through the air. "Qinghe, regardless of who you are, I will be waiting." My footsteps faltered for a moment, but I continued walking straight ahead, not looking back until I reached my quarters. Song Qinglan was crouching by the door, drawing circles on the ground. She looked at me resentfully. "Qinghe, you prioritize romance over your friends." I gave her a light tap on the head, telling her to go back and get some sleep. She clutched her head and ran off. Before leaving, she turned back to tease me. Lying on the bed, I stared blankly at the rafters. Xiaoming Yu, Yu Fu, Song Qing, and even those disciples. This spirit realm is becoming increasingly intriguing. Early the next morning, a clamor arose from the martial arts arena. Mo Xuan rushed in, his face deathly pale, sweat pouring off him like rain. "It is ruined. The people from the Qingxuan immortal sect have arrived, and this time, they have come to stir up trouble and demand an explanation." I had only just laid down on my reclining chair when Shu Moxuan stumbled into the courtyard, his face drained of color, drenched in sweat. "The people from the Qingxuan immortal sect have arrived, led by the very same elder in golden robes from yesterday. This time they were not merely passing through. They were heading straight for the Tiangang sword sect." Behind him followed 18 swordsmen clad in white. I slowly rose from my reclining chair, not forgetting to stretch my limbs. Zhu Moxuan spun in a panic and asked, "What should I do now?" "What should we do? We shall go and meet them, of course." Song Qinglan rushed in from outside, her small face deathly pale, drained of all color. She tugged at my sleeve. "Qinghe, do not go. Those people are terrifying." I patted her head. "If we do not go, the trouble will only grow." The three of us strolled leisurely toward the training grounds. From afar we saw a colossal spirit boat hovering in the sky. It was entirely golden, and radiated an overwhelming pressure. At the bow of the ship stood the golden-robed elder, his hands clasped behind his back, exuding an oppressive aura. Behind him, the 18 white-clad swordsmen were lined up in perfect formation, their faces expressionless, with even the lowest among them at the peak of the true immortal realm. On the training grounds, the disciples of the Tiangang sword sect were silent as cicadas in winter. On the high platform, Xiao Mingyu's face was deathly pale, her fingers gripping the railing until her knuckles turned white. Yufu stood right beside her, hand resting on the hilt of her sword, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Several female elders surrounded them, standing in solemn formation, prepared for battle. The golden-robed elder's voice boomed like thunder across the entire square. He demanded that the sect hand over the person, his arrogance unbridled, leaving no room for negotiation. Xiao Mingyu stepped forward, presenting her argument without showing a hint of submission. The golden-robed elder snorted coldly, completely unimpressed. With a flick of his hand, the 18 swordsmen simultaneously drew their blades. A pillar of sword light soared into the sky, instantly illuminating half the firmament. The disciples retreated in terror, and the training grounds descended into chaos. I continued to chew on my apple, leisurely pushing my way through the crowd toward the center. Shu Moxuan's legs grew weak, and he nearly collapsed, but I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him back up. Song Qinglan remained pale as a sheet, yet she forced herself to follow close behind me. Reaching the center of the training grounds, I raised my head to look at the golden-robed elder. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with contempt and mockery, scanning me from head to toe before a sneer curled his lips. He demanded that I cripple my own cultivation and return with him to face punishment, adding that if I refused, he would raise the entire Tiangang sword sect to the ground. Xiao Mingyue immediately lunged forward to shield me. She stood tall and defiant, showing no trace of fear before the terrifying pressure emanating from the opposition. Yu Fu stepped forward as well, sword in hand to guard my flank, while several female elders lined up behind us. The old man in yellow robes smiled triumphantly, and with a flick of his sleeve, a horrific wave of pressure descended from the heavens, crushing down upon us. Xiao Mingyue and her companions turned deathly pale, their bodies swaying as if they might collapse at any moment, while the disciples were forced to their knees, unable to move a muscle. I, too, felt the immense weight descend upon my shoulders. Yet that was all it amounted to. The spiritual energy within me surged automatically, effortlessly neutralizing the overwhelming pressure. I patted Xiao Mingyu on the shoulder, signaling her to retreat behind me. When she turned to look at me, her eyes were already brimming with redness. Tears welled up, but she bit her lip and shook her head, determined not to back down. She is the sect master, and I am the guest elder. A guest elder is born to bear the burdens of the sect. Do not try to be a hero on my behalf. She stood stunned, tears trembling at the corners of her eyes. I stepped past her, moved to the front, and looked the old man in yellow robes straight in the eye. The old man's face darkened, killing intent flickering in his gaze as he channeled the entirety of his soul-shaking pressure toward me alone. Xiao Mingyu cried out in terror, attempting to rush forward to save me. Yu Fu held her back, shaking her head slightly. I stood my ground, immovable as a mountain, even feeling a hint of a smile. This meager pressure? It is not even comparable to the power of a single fart from my yellow dog back in the lower realm. After 100,000 years in the lower realm, what kind of storms have I not weathered? Seeing that I remained completely unaffected, the old man's expression finally shifted, his eyes widening in utter disbelief. Impossible. This is impossible. What is your cultivation realm exactly? I ascended only yesterday. Is there some issue with being at the 9th layer of the true immortal realm? Nonsense. A true immortal cannot withstand my pressure. I could no longer be bothered to waste words with him. With a gentle flick of my hand, an invisible ripple radiated from my palm, and the very ground of the Tiangang sword sect trembled faintly. Immediately following, a brilliant golden light erupted from all directions as intricate formation runes manifested from deep beneath the earth. They intertwined, weaving together into a massive barrier of light that instantly enveloped the entire sect. The old man's face drained of color as he gasped, "The sect protecting grand formation." He stood frozen, his eyes filled with shock, his lips continuing to mutter in disbelief. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The sect protecting grand formation requires months of preparation. That is only because you people of the spirit realm are far too incompetent. In my 100,000 years in the lower realms, my talent for formations reached its absolute zenith. I could casually construct 7 or 8 of these with a flick of my wrist. The old man in the yellow robes did not believe it, and ordered a swordsman to step forward and test the defenses. The swordsman swung his blade against the barrier of light, but was instantly sent flying backward, coughing up blood as he collapsed to the ground, unable to rise again. The entire arena erupted in an uproar. Everyone was left completely stunned. Xiao Mingyu stared at me with her mouth agape, as if looking at a monster. Yu Fu's eyes shimmered, her lips muttering something indecipherable. Shu Moxuan lunged forward and gripped my legs, wailing and begging for forgiveness, claiming that he had been blind to my greatness before. Song Qinglan kicked him aside, her face filled with pure disdain. I paid these two fools no mind. I looked toward the old man in yellow, whose face had turned ash gray. He gritted his teeth, rendered speechless. The 18 swordsmen surrounding him eyed me with extreme vigilance. Let us do this. If you leave now, I will not pursue this matter. But tell your sect master this. From this day forth, the Tiangang sword sect is under my protection. Anyone who touches them shall die. The old man in yellow stared at me for a long time, then finally gritted his teeth, spat out a single word, retreat, and turned to leave. Their spirit ship turned around and retreated dejectedly toward the horizon. The sky beyond the barrier of light returned to clarity. The martial arts arena exploded with thunderous cheers. Disciples crowded around me, chirping with endless questions. That is enough. Everyone return to your duties. Xiao Mingyu stood where she was, gazing at me in a trance, her eyes brimming with tears, her lips trembling violently. Before she could speak, Yu Fu stepped to her side and whispered something into her ear. Xiao Mingyue nodded and turned to leave. Her retreating figure appeared truly lonely and fragile, a sight that pained the heart. My heart tightened, and I wanted to pursue her, but I forced myself to restrain the urge. Now is not the time. I must wait a little longer. Shu Moxuan was still clutching my legs, howling at the top of his lungs. He begged to become my disciple, swearing he would do anything I asked. Song Qinglan stared in disbelief, her expression filled with profound disdain as she witnessed the scene. At that very moment, a cold snort echoed across the heavens. It was the voice of the yellow-robed elder reverberating through the firmament. Just what manner of person are you? Reveal your identity. I raised my head to look at the sky, a faint smile on my lips. Yet I offered no reply. Shu Moxuan trembled, whispering, "Big brother, he has not yet given up." Song Qinglan moved closer and asked in a low voice, "Qinghe, who on earth are you?" "I am your elder brother. Do not overthink it." "Stop that, elder brother. I am not that impressive." I turned my gaze toward the direction where Zhao Mingyu had just departed. In my heart, I silently murmured, "Little fatty, do not be anxious. Wait just a little longer. Your master is right by your side. No one shall ever be allowed to bully you. This Qingshuan immortal sect is nothing of consequence. In the future, there will be far more formidable adversaries, but that is of no concern. If one comes, I shall strike one down. If a pair arrives, I shall crush them both." After 100,000 years in the lower realm, I had grown far too stagnant. It is high time I stretched my limbs. That night, I slept soundly, dreaming only of the little fatty from the lower realm, skipping joyfully around me. Early the next morning, I was jarred awake by Song Qinglan's frantic shouting. She stormed into my room, pointing at the sky and telling me to look. I rubbed my eyes, stepped out into the courtyard, and looked up at the ascension ranking hovering in the air, radiating a brilliant golden light. My name sat prominently at the top of the list. Ji Chengqing, 9 Heavens Continent. Beside it was noted True Immortal Peak, accompanied by an upward-pointing arrow. Song Qinglan stared at me fixedly for a long while, her eyes filled with a strange expression. I yawned and remarked that it was likely just a coincidence of names. What a remarkable coincidence. She rolled her eyes, her face full of skepticism, yet she asked nothing further before turning and rushing away. Outside, the sect had already descended into complete chaos. Disciples of the Tiangang sword sect were all gazing upward, pointing and whispering in a frenzy about the ascension ranking. One exclaimed in shock, "To surge to the peak of the true immortal realm in just a single day." Another replied, "This must be a monstrous genius reborn." I lay lazily on my recliner, snacking on an apple while watching the commotion. Shu Moxuan came charging in from outside, his face flushed red. "Big brother, have you noticed that fellow, Ji Changqing?" "I have." "What do you make of it? In a single day, he broke through from the 6th layer of the true immortal realm to the very peak. What in the world is this? He is truly a monster among monsters." I smiled and said nothing, continuing to munch on my apple. Just then, the sound of wind being torn asunder echoed from afar. Dozens of streaks of light pierced through the sky, rushing straight toward this location before coming to a halt in the air outside the sect. They were scouts and envoys from various factions, with some wearing the robes of the Qingshuan immortal sect. Their imposing auras were overwhelming. Others had come from different sects, each one possessing a cultivation base far from ordinary, and there were even a few lone experts standing upon the clouds, looking down. Zhu Moxuan's face had drained of all color. "It's over, we've been exposed." "What do you mean exposed? I have committed no crime." "You crippled Qin Yi and slapped the face of the Qingshuan immortal sect directly. Now that the ascension ranking shows your cultivation surging like this, those people will certainly guess that there is something amiss with you." I nodded, and said that also made sense. Having said that, I lay back down, showing absolutely no sign of work. No sooner had I finished speaking than an announcement arrived from outside. The Qingshuan immortal sect had sent people again. This time, it was an elder of the Kari, Xuan, rank, 1 tier higher than the old man in yellow from yesterday. I stood up, stretched my limbs, and stepped outside in a leisurely manner. The martial arts arena was already packed with people, and hovering in the air was an old man in gray robes. His appearance was gaunt and withered, but his aura was 10 times more powerful than the old man from the day before. Behind him stood 2 sword cultivators, clad in purple, radiating killing intent. Zhao Mingyu stood on the high platform, her expression grave, a jade talisman close at her side, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword, surrounded by several female elders. Standing in strict formation, the old man in gray opened his mouth and demanded an explanation from me. His voice was raspy and grating. Zhao Mingyu seemed intent on stepping forward to say something. I patted her shoulder gently, signaling for her to step back. I strode into the center of the martial arts arena and looked up at the old man in gray. He peered down at me, his gaze flickering with uncertainty. He scrutinized me for a long moment, as if attempting to peer through my very origins. "The Ji Changqing on the immortal rankings must simply share your name. There are many such cases in this world." He let out a cold snort, refusing to believe that anyone could ascend and reach the peak of the true immortal stage in a single day. Such a feat had never been seen. Either you bear some immense treasure, or you are practicing demonic arts. You must return with me today to face an investigation. And what if I refuse? He flicked his sleeve, and two sword cultivators drew their blades in unison. The sword light surged forth, dyeing an entire corner of the sky. A terrifying sword intent descended, enveloping the entire Tiangang sword sect, leaving the disciples breathless. I stood still, feeling the weight of that sword intent, silently assessing it in my heart. Truly, what level of power is this? In the end, it was not even on par with the cricket I kept in the mortal realm. The old man in gray saw me standing unmoved, and his expression shifted instantly. Just then, a wave of commotion erupted from the distance. A golden streak of light rushed toward us like a shooting star, its speed astonishingly fast. In the blink of an eye, it arrived above the martial arts arena. The newcomer was a middle-aged man in yellow robes, his face full of dignity, his aura far more formidable than that of the old man in gray. The old man in gray changed complexion, bowing respectfully. Greetings to the law enforcement elder of the Qingxuan immortal sect. The middle-aged man in yellow waved his hand dismissively and turned his gaze toward me. After observing me for a few moments, his eyes gleamed with intrigue, and he turned to whisper something to the old man in gray. The old man in gray's expression shifted repeatedly before he finally nodded. The middle-aged man in yellow looked at me and declared, "We shall not pursue this today, but your background will be investigated thoroughly." Having said this, he led everyone away immediately. They came in haste and departed with equal urgency. They left me standing there, utterly bewildered. Did this group come here merely to put on a performance for me? The martial arts arena erupted into a flurry of heated discussions. Xiao Mingyu stood dazed, staring at me in silence. Tears welled in her eyes, and her lips trembled violently. The three characters Ji Yu Changqing on the ascension ranking had been a deep, festering wound in her heart for 13,000 years. She had waited for so long that she began to wonder if the person standing before her, Qing He, was truly him. She dared not ask, nor did she dare to seek confirmation. She feared it would turn out to be nothing more than a fleeting dream. Yu Fu stepped forward and gently took her hand, and Xiao Mingyu's tears finally overflowed. I stood at a distance, observing the scene. My heart tightened with pain, yet I managed to restrain myself from stepping forward. Song Qinglan leaned in and whispered, "Are you truly Ji Yu Changqing?" I patted her head without answering, while Shu Moxuan rushed over, intending to grab my leg, only to be kicked away by me. At that very moment, another streak of light tore through the sky. It descended at the edge of the martial arts arena. It was a woman dressed in black. She possessed a tall, elegant figure and a cold, aloof appearance. An aura of biting frost radiated from her. She walked straight toward me, her gaze filled with intensity. "I am an elder of the Piao Miao Immortal Palace, commanded to bring you to meet our palace master." The moment the four words, Piao Miao Immortal Palace, were uttered, the entire crowd drew a sharp breath. That was a peak power within the spirit realm, even more formidable than the Qingxuan immortal sect. She claimed the palace master felt the aura of an old acquaintance upon me. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be one of my disciples? In my 100,000 years in the lower realm, my disciples were countless. I shook my head and replied, "I have no time for this at present." The woman in black frowned, stared at me for a long time, and finally left behind a parting remark before turning away. "The Piao Miao Immortal Palace will wait for you for 3 days. Bear the consequences yourself if you do not appear." Having said this, she transformed into a streak of light and vanished into the horizon. The martial arts arena erupted once again. The disciples looked at me as if I were a monster. "With both the Qingxuan immortal sect and the Piao Miao immortal palace seeking you out, what exactly is your background?" I stretched my back and began to walk toward the rear. Song Qinglan and Shu Moxuan followed behind me, looking dejected. "The number of people you have offended is only growing, brother. If soldiers come, I shall meet them with generals. If water comes, I shall block it with earth." That evening, I stood before the courtyard gate, gazing up at the night sky. The ascension ranking was still flickering, the three golden characters Ji Yu Changqing shining brilliantly. I let out a sigh. It seemed I could no longer hide my identity after all. Just then, a gentle breeze swept through, and a figure appeared in the corner of the courtyard without a sound. It was an elderly man with white hair, withered features, and piercing, sharp eyes. He gazed at me for a long time, his eyes filled with overwhelming emotion. I observed him intently, and finally, I recognized who it was. It turned out to be the golden hound that once guarded my gate in the lower realms. Against all expectations, it had successfully transformed and ascended to become a demon emperor. It had traveled all the way from the demon territory in the dead of night merely because it saw the name inscribed upon the ascension board. The familiar presence drove it to traverse thousands of miles, all in the span of a single night. Standing before me, that aged face broke into a smile. The moment I recognized him, a surge of warmth filled my heart. After 100,000 years in the lower realm, even a dog had ascended, and even attained the rank of demon emperor. It observed me, noting that my aura had shifted significantly. Yet, my sword intent remained unchanged. As for how my disciples in the spirit realm were faring, they were doing exceptionally well. Every single one of them had become a powerhouse in their own right, establishing their influence across the entirety of the 9 provinces spirit realm. It is just that for the past 13,000 years, they have been busy, yet remained in total silence. Whenever there was movement on the ascension board, they would dispatch men to investigate, only to return in disappointment every time. Until this very day, do not alert those disciples just yet. I still have matters to attend to, and cannot reveal my true identity for the time being. He nodded in understanding, though a hint of worry lingered in his eyes. He feared I could not handle the troubles of the spirit realm alone. But such trivial matters could never obstruct me. The 100,000 years spent in the lower realm were certainly not in vain. He remained silent for a moment before saying, "As you command, but I shall keep watch from the shadows to prevent any unforeseen incidents." I told him to return and inform my disciples that I am well, and that I would seek them out once I have resolved these affairs. He hesitated for a moment, then finally bowed his head in agreement. Before leaving, he looked back at me one last time, filled with deep attachment. After all, we had shared a life of companionship for 100,000 years. Then, his figure vanished into the deep night, as if he had never been there at all, leaving not a single trace behind. I stood in the center of the courtyard, gazing at the night sky in a trance, remembering the golden hound that used to lie before the hearth to bask in the sun, and how it would wag its tail frantically to follow at my heels whenever it had the chance. And then, one day, it attained its demon. I spent a long time in regret, believing there was no one left to guard the gate. Little did I expect that after 13,000 years, we would meet again. And furthermore, you have cultivated into a demon emperor, becoming a major figure within the demon realm. How quickly time passes. Everything has changed. All my former disciples have ascended to become grand masters. Even my dog has cultivated into a demon emperor, reigning supreme over its own territory. Only I remained trapped in the lower realm for 100,000 years. It was with great difficulty that I finally ascended, yet I must still hide my true identity, though perhaps this is for the best. I shall play with them slowly, to see what kind of moral character these disciples of mine now possess, especially that little fatty, Zhao Mingyu. She is right before my eyes, yet we cannot acknowledge one another. Seeing her tears fall, my heart aches as if pierced by blades. But I must endure it. I shall wait a little longer. Once I have cleared away these dancing clowns, I will openly and rightfully reunite with my disciple. Song Qinglan poked her head out of the room, saw me standing dazed in the courtyard, and quickly retreated inside. I laid back on the reclining chair and looked up at the night sky. The ascension ranking was still flickering, and my name shone with an incredibly blinding light. Now, the entire spirit realm knows that an ascender named Ji Yu Cheng Qing has arrived. Things are about to become very busy, but this is also convenient. I need not waste effort hunting them down one by one. I shall let them come to me instead. That night, I lay on my reclining chair, staring blankly at the night sky. My disciples must be restless, unable to sit or stand in peace. The thought is quite amusing. Each of them has become a prominent figure, and now they are scouring the world for their master, as if playing a game of hide-and-seek. As I was lost in thought, the corners of my mouth curled into a smile, when suddenly, I sensed a trace of murderous intent flickering in and out of existence. It was drifting through the dark of the night, moving toward me. I narrowed my eyes, pretending to be fast asleep, inwardly sneering at whoever was so blind, unable to sleep in the middle of the night, and choosing instead to come here to throw their life away. That murderous aura drew closer and closer, reaching the perimeter of the courtyard. Through my half-closed eyelids, I saw a black shadow leap over the wall, moving with grace, landing without making a sound. A glance told me they were a professional, clad in black, face covered, their aura tightly suppressed and hidden, yet they could not escape my notice. A fifth heaven immortal statue expert, 2 minor realms higher than Qin Moqiao. It seems the Qingshuan immortal sect has truly lost its patience. During the day, the law enforcement elder claimed they would not pursue the matter for now, yet by night, they have already dispatched an assassin. How truly insidious. The assassin in black stood in the center of the courtyard, scanning his surroundings. His gaze swept over the recliner where I lay, pausing for a moment. Perhaps he was verifying whether I had fallen into a deep slumber. I deliberately turned over and let out a rhythmic, feigned snore. He sneered, and with a flick of his wrist, a pitch-black short blade appeared in his hand, clearly coated in lethal poison. He moved toward me, step by step, his footsteps deathly silent. Upon reaching a distance of 3 paces from the recliner, he raised the blade high. Just as it was about to descend, I suddenly snapped my eyes open, greeting him with a radiant smile. He froze, his eyes widening in sheer terror. I lightly flicked my finger, striking the blade with precise force. A surge of immense power numbed his hand, forcing him to retreat half a step. His eyes bulged, filled with utter disbelief. He clearly sensed I was only at the peak of the true immortal realm. How could I possess such shocking strength? I slowly sat up from the recliner, stretched my limbs, and as his expression darkened, he lunged forward with his blade once more. This time, at 10 times the speed, channeled with terrifying spiritual energy. I swayed to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and delivered a light palm strike to his wrist. He grunted as the short blade was sent flying from his grip. Fear consumed his eyes, and he scrambled to stand, brushing the dust from his robes before gnashing his teeth. His aura erupted, unleashing the full pressure of a fifth-layer upper immortal, causing the entire courtyard to tremble as the ground cracked beneath him. He threw a punch, the force of his aura manifesting into a ferocious tiger pouncing toward me. I met his fist with one of my own in a direct confrontation. With a deafening blast, spiritual energy detonated, and he was sent flying backward, crashing through the perimeter wall. I remained standing in place, immovable as a mountain, my breath not even slightly disturbed. He struggled to rise, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, his eyes filled with dread as he muttered that it was impossible. The peak of the true immortal realm is more than enough to deal with you. He gritted his teeth, refusing to believe such an absurdity. With hands forming a seal, his spiritual energy surged violently, and a massive sword phantom coalesced above his head. The sword intent soared into the heavens, illuminating the night sky. The peerless technique, the heaven mystic sword of the Qingxuan immortal sect. He let out a thunderous roar as the sword phantom descended upon me. I looked up at the blade, my heart remaining entirely without ripple. In my 100,000 years in the lower realm, I have witnessed strikes far more formidable than this. I did not dodge, nor did I evade. I pointed a finger, and a streak of golden light erupted from my fingertip, striking the target true. The sword shadows shattered instantly, dissolving into a myriad of brilliant specks of light. He vomited a mouthful of fresh blood, his complexion turning ashen gray. He turned and fled without the slightest hesitation. Moving with incredible swiftness, he reached the base of the wall in a single breath. At a glance, it was clear he intended to leap over it and escape. At that very moment, a terrifying surge of demonic energy descended from the heavens. The entire courtyard trembled violently, and the very air seemed to freeze in place. The assassin locked up, rendered completely unable to move. A stream of golden light slammed down directly in front of him. It was the golden dog from the night before. Its size was akin to a mountain, its golden fur radiant and brilliant under the moonlight. The aura of a demon emperor pressed down, suffocating all in its presence. Terrified to the point of collapse, the assassin slumped to the ground, his limbs failing him. The great beast lifted a paw and swatted lightly. The assassin let out a shrill scream as he was sent flying dozens of zang, slamming heavily into the cliff face. He fell completely unconscious. I stared at the massive creature before me, stunned. Did I not tell you to return to the demon realm and watch over the disciples? Why have you returned here? The great dog turned to look at me, its eyes filled with both longing and trepidation. I was keeping watch nearby and, sensing the killing intent, I rushed over immediately. I nodded, warmth stirring in my heart. Truly, the dog I have raised for 100,000 years is more considerate than that group of disciples. It stepped toward me, its massive frame nudging affectionately against me. All right. It let out a low rumble, its tail wagging as rapidly as an electric fan. At this moment, Song Qinglan rushed out from the room, drawn by the commotion to investigate. Seeing me being nudged repeatedly by the giant dog, she shrieked, but then recognized it as the demon emperor from the previous night. She stood frozen in shock, unable to utter a word for a long time and nearly fainting, only saved by Shu Moxuan's steadying hand. Shu Moxuan had also arrived, but upon seeing the great dog, his legs turned to jelly, and he dropped to his knees, trembling and unable to move. The great dog paid them no mind, continuing to nudge me with its head. Song Qinglan regained her senses and hid to the side, observing them stealthily. The great dog suddenly recalled something and looked at me to report that the disciples had begun their journey. A few who were nearby would arrive by tomorrow or the day after, but others had been intercepted along the way. There are those who do not wish for our master and disciples to reunite and have established checkpoints. Those whom the disciples had dispatched have all fallen into the enemy's sights. I remained silent for a few moments, calculating within my heart. It seems that what it said earlier was indeed true. Someone is truly lurking in the shadows of the spirit realm, and even it has been unable to trace the origins of those individuals. I nodded to signify that I understood. It expressed a desire to investigate the matter in secret, but I shook my head to stop it. To strike now would only alert the enemy. It is better to wait for them to reveal themselves. It hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. Before leaving, it turned to look at me one last time, showing great reluctance, before its figure soared upward, shooting straight into the sky and vanishing into the deep, endless night. Tusio Moxuan lay paralyzed on the ground for quite some time, unable to rise, until Song Qinglan kicked him, finally bringing him back to his senses. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with complex emotions. She sensed that I was concealing too many secrets from them, yet I offered no explanation, merely patting her head. Just then, a sound came from a distance. The assassin had regained consciousness and was struggling to stand. I walked over and crouched down to look at him, warning him to return and tell the Qingshuan immortal sect that if they dare send anyone else, it will not end as simply as just being knocked unconscious. He nodded frantically, scrambling away in a panicked retreat. Song Qinglan asked, "Why let him go just like that?" I smiled and replied that killing him was useless. It is better to let him deliver the message. Tuo Moxuan climbed to his feet, his face filled with pure adoration. I stretched my body and went to sleep, lying back on my recliner to stare vacantly at the night sky. The news brought by the great hound left my mind unsettled. My disciples are all on their way here, but there are those who seek to intercept them. The waters of the spirit realm run deeper than I imagined. Someone does not wish for my disciples and me to reunite. But who could it be? Is it an old enemy of my disciples? Or is the target actually me? After all, back in the lower realm, I had more than my fair share of enemies. The corners of my mouth could not help but curl upward. The more chaotic it becomes, the more interesting it is. It serves as the perfect opportunity to stretch my limbs, as the 100,000 years in the lower realm were far too dull. Song Qinglan moved a chair to my side to stand guard, claiming she was uneasy in case another assassin should arrive. If one does come, they will make for perfect target practice. She always insists on being headstrong, so I said nothing, closing my eyes to feign sleep while calculating my next moves. The Qingshuan immortal sect will certainly not let this rest. The Piao Miao immortal palace is still waiting for me for 3 days. And now, yet another hidden power has emerged. Truly, things are becoming increasingly lively. Xiao Mingyu? That little chubby girl must have seen the ascension board by now, right? What is her state of mind at this moment? Is she feeling agitated or hesitant? Should I go and scout the situation tomorrow? No, it is better to wait a little longer, until all potential threats are cleared. Only then will I formally accept her as my disciple. The night has grown deep. The entire sect has fallen into silence, with only the ascension board still shimmering on the horizon. My name, glowing in brilliant gold, stands out prominently. Tonight is surely a sleepless night for many, but I care not. I have no need for cultivation, and my level rises even while I rest. Such a carefree existence indeed. Early the next morning, the courtyard became bustling with activity. Song Qinglan brought in breakfast, her hands trembling as she did so. There are many people outside specifically requesting an audience. I stretched my back and commanded, "Let them in." The first to rush in was a woman in red robes, possessing a petite frame and exquisite features. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She froze for 3 seconds upon seeing me, then lunged forward, throwing herself directly into my embrace. She sobbed uncontrollably, the longing of 13,000 years pouring out as tears. This is my youngest disciple from years past, Su Xiaoxuan. Back in the lower realms, she was the most prone to crying, shedding tears at the slightest provocation. Yet now she has become a renowned grandmaster alchemist of the spirit realm. She looked up at me, eyes blurred with tears, appearing as aggrieved as a child, which stirred a sense of pity. Following behind her was a man in green robes, with delicate features and a refined, scholarly aura. This is that bookworm from years past, Chen Shunyan, who used to spend every waking moment buried in ancient texts, rarely speaking or smiling. Now, he has become the pavilion master of the scripture pavilion, a powerhouse in his own right. He stepped forward and bowed deeply, his eyes slightly reddened, filled with both agitation and profound respect. At this moment, a golden light descended from the heavens. The great earth dog has returned, landing in the courtyard and transforming into human form. In the guise of an old man with white hair, he approached me and bowed respectfully. Upon seeing him, Su Xiaoxuan and Chen Shuyan were stunned, recognizing this as the golden dog that once guarded the gates. Su Xiaoxuan released my arm and examined it closely. The great earth dog nodded as a form of greeting, while Song Qinglan stood to the side, completely stunned. A grandmaster alchemist, the pavilion master of the spirit pavilion, a demon emperor. They were all disciples. What kind of celestial sect was this? Shu Moxuan knelt down immediately, performing the gesture with absolute formality. Su Xiaoxuan stared at me for a long moment, then furrowed her brows, realizing that my aura was inconsistent. I was only at the peak of the true immortal realm, yet the fifth heaven upper immortal assassin from last night had been beaten by me until he was crawling on the ground like a pathetic descendant. Chen Shuyan stepped forward, her expression grave, as she delivered news that shook the heavens and the earth. Within the spirit realm, there exists a mysterious organization known as the Heaven Hunting Alliance, which specializes in hunting down the prodigies who ascend from the lower realms, especially those who have cultivated a profound foundation in the lower world. Because the daguerreau they have attained is too powerful, it threatens the balance of the various factions within the spirit realm. Behind the Heaven Hunting Alliance stand several top-tier factions that refuse to allow new, powerful entities to rise, They strike while those who have ascended are still vulnerable. Some are assassinated, others have their cultivation crippled, and some are coerced into becoming puppets. A chill rose in my heart as I listened. For 100,000 years in the lower realm, I could not sense the miracle of ascension. Could it be that this heaven-hunting alliance had interfered? Chen Shuyan perceived my thoughts and nodded. They had been investigating for a long time and had finally uncovered evidence. The reason I remained in seclusion for 100,000 years without being able to ascend was that the heaven-hunting alliance had been working from the shadows, placing a restriction upon the lower realm to disrupt my connection to the heavenly Tao, preventing me from breaking through that final threshold. It was not until 100,000 years later, when my cultivation became so overwhelming that the world could no longer contain it, that I was finally able to reluctantly shatter their seal. Hearing this, Su Xiaoxuan stomped her feet in fury, her eyes reddening, while a malevolent light flickered in the eyes of the great earth dog, his killing intent fierce and absolute. The heaven-hunting alliance has already made its move. Knowing that you have ascended, Master, various factions are currently hunting for you. They have laid ambushes all across the spirit realm. Many of our people sent out have been intercepted, and some have even suffered grave injuries. I furrowed my brows, my heart sinking. It seems this Lai Tianming intends to lay a hand on my people. At this moment, footsteps echoed from outside, and a woman in white robes stood at the courtyard gate. She stared at me, dumbstruck, her eyes rimmed with red. It was Zhao Mingyu. The chubby girl had finally arrived. She stood there, motionless, silent, tears streaming down her face. Upon seeing her, Su Xiaoxuan called out to her as senior sister. But Zhao Mingyu ignored her, her gaze fixed solely on me. 13,000 years. She had waited for 13,000 years. From the chubby girl in the lower realms to the sect master of the Tiangong Sword sect that she had become today, a formidable authority in her own right, yet in my eyes, she remained the little girl who loved eating watermelons. She took a step toward me, then another, stopping right before me, her body trembling slightly. She reached out as if to touch my face, only to pull her hand back. Her lips quivered, unable to form a single word. I let out a soft sigh and pulled her into my embrace. Her entire body stiffened, and then she burst into heart-wrenching sobs. Every ounce of grievance held for 13,000 years poured out in her weeping. I patted her back to offer comfort. Beside us, Su Xiaoxuan was also sniffling. Song Qinglan stood completely motionless, her eyes wide with shock, while Tuo Maoxuan, kneeling on the ground, had turned to stone. The great earth dog in human form stood to the side, his eyes slightly red. Chen Shuyan turned his head away, secretly wiping away tears. It was quite a long while before Zhao Mingyu finally stopped crying. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen and bloodshot. I wiped the streaks of tears from her face. She bit her lip, looking utterly aggrieved. I told her that I had acted as I did because I feared the burden of my plans would frighten her. She leaned against me, lingering for a long time, unable to bring herself to pull away. Suddenly, the sound of wind being torn apart erupted from outside. A streak of black light shot straight into the courtyard. Embedded firmly into the courtyard wall was a black flying sword, and tied to the blade was a letter, emanating a sinister aura. Chen Shuyan's expression shifted, and he stepped in front of me. The great earth dog immediately reverted to his true form, taking the lead, while Zhao Mingyu and Su Xiaoxuan simultaneously drew their swords. I walked over and retrieved the letter, unfolding it to find only a few lines written in blood-red ink. One day later, at the Spirit Realm's Prodigy Assembly, they publicly executed Ji-Yu Changqing. If the master wishes to save him, let Ji-Yu Changqing come in person. Otherwise, not a single life will be spared. I handed the letter to Chen Shuyan. Upon reading it, his face turned deathly pale, and his fingertips trembled. The great earth dog shifted back into human form, his eyes brimming with murderous intent. Zhao Mingyu glanced at the letter, and the color drained from her face. Su Xiaoxuan was trembling with rage. It was truly abominable. Chen Shuyan stated, "This is a trap intended to force you to reveal yourself." Zhao Mingyu tugged at my sleeve, begging me not to go. Su Xiaoxuan suggested we find a place to hide and wait for the storm to pass. Chen Shuyan remained silent for a few seconds before offering his deduction. The Heaven-Hunting Alliance is not merely targeting you, they are targeting all prodigies who have ascended from the lower realms. Behind them, someone is setting a massive trap, aiming to control every single cultivator who has ascended to the spirit realm. I nodded, for I had already foreseen this. The great earth dog insisted on going to investigate their origins first. I shook my head. There is no need for further investigation. In 7 days, I shall go to meet them personally. Zhao Mingyu panicked, worried that my cultivation base was too low, despite my peak true immortal stage being more than enough to handle them. Su Xiaoxuan declared that she would accompany me. Chen Shuyan added, "This disciple will go as well." The great earth dog vowed to guard my side. As I looked at my disciples, a wave of warmth surged through my heart. The 100,000 years spent in the lower realm were not in vain. When the critical moment arrived, None of them proved to be cowards. Then, let us go together, so the heaven-hunting alliance may witness what it means for master and disciples to be united in purpose. We shall drain the eastern sea dry. Xiao Mingyue held my hand for a long time, unable to let go. I patted her head and told her to rest easy. Having been trapped in the lower realm for 100,000 years, I had grown restless, and was actually worried there would be no one left to play with. She burst into laughter, bright as a child. Su Xiaoxuan leaned in, also wanting a pat on the head. I smiled and obliged her request. Chen Shuyan stood by and coughed softly. I patted his shoulder. He had grown so much, and he blushed in response. Although my disciples are thousands of years old, in my eyes, you are all still children. Zhang Qinglan stood to the side, watching with a bitter expression, her gaze complex and hesitant, as if there was something she wished to say. Su Xiaoxuan cast a curious glance at the young woman. Xiao Mingyu followed her gaze and asked, "Who is this?" Zhang Qinglan puffed out her chest and declared, "I am his personal bodyguard." Su Xiaoxuan stared at me, stunned. I smiled and recounted the events that had transpired. Xiao Mingyu sighed and told me I was truly a fool. Shu Moxuan scrambled up from the ground, his face filled with pure adoration. "Big brother, why didn't you say so earlier? You nearly frightened me to death several times over." The atmosphere in the courtyard had eased slightly, but I knew the fierce battle 7 days away would be anything but easy. The Lai Tian Alliance dared to issue a challenge. They must have made thorough preparations. But it matters not. If one comes, I shall strike one down. If a pair comes, I shall strike both down. No matter how many arrive, I will face them all. Being stifled in the lower realms for 100,000 years has been far too long. It is high time I loosened my limbs. Xiao Mingyu leaned against me and whispered, "Master, do not abandon me again this time. You wouldn't, would you?" She laughed, tears still clinging to her face. But that smile was truly beautiful, incredibly radiant. Su Xiaoxuan cut in and hugged my other arm. Chen Shuyan stood silently to the side, acting as a guard. The great earth dog assumed its human form to keep watch at the courtyard gate. Looking at these disciples, I felt a sense of profound peace. They had all waited for me. Now, it was my turn to wait for them, waiting for the Spirit Realm Heaven's Pride Assembly 7 days from now. I wish to see what this Lai Tian Alliance is truly made of. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Spirit Realm Heaven's Pride Assembly was held at the Heaven's Pride Arena, in the heart of the 9 provinces, where forces from all corners converged. The crowds were like an overflowing tide. The Lai Tian Alliance had set up a combat stage right in the center, loudly demanding the public execution of Jiyu Changqing's disciples, forcing a cowardly tortoise like me to reveal himself. The news spread across the entire spirit realm, drawing countless gazes. Some came to revel in the chaos, others sought to profit from the turmoil, and some simply wished to see just who this Jiyu Changqing truly was. The Tiangang sword sect was fully prepared for battle. Xiao Mingyu had long since led the disciples in preparation for departure. Su Xiaoxuan, the great earthhound, revealed its true form, appearing exceptionally majestic. I walked out of the courtyard at a leisurely pace. Seeing my disciples acting as if facing a formidable enemy, I could not help but smile. "Do not be so tense." Xiao Mingyu stepped forward and tugged at my sleeve, her eyes filled with worry and reluctance. Su Xiaoxuan rushed over and clung tightly to my arm, refusing to let go. Chen Shuyan stood to the side with a grave expression. The great earthhound guarded my side, refusing to step away even an inch, while Song Qinglan and Shu Moxuan also insisted on accompanying me. Our group marched imposingly toward the Heaven's Pride platform. Upon our arrival, the area surrounding the Heaven's Pride platform was already packed with spectators. On the high dais sat the representatives of various factions. The Qingxuan Immortal Sect and the Miao Miao Immortal Palace were both in attendance. The members of the Lai Tian Alliance occupied the very center of the arena. An old man in black robes stood upon the platform, letting out a cold sneer. He was the master of the Lai Tian Alliance, a cultivator at the half-step golden immortal realm. The aura radiating from his body was truly terrifying, suffocating all who stood near him. Below the platform stood dozens of Lai Tian Alliance experts. Each and every one of them was at the superior immortal realm, their killing intent surging. And among them were many ascenders controlled by the Lai Tian Alliance, their eyes vacant, standing in the corner of the arena, like mere puppets. The moment our group appeared, we drew countless gazes. Some recognized Xiao Mingyue, sect master of the Tiangang sword sect. Others recognized Su Xiaoxuan, the Grand Master of Alchemy. Some identified Chen Shuyan, Pavilion Master of the Spirit Pavilion, and others recognized the Great Earthhound as the Demon Emperor of the Demon Realm. Yet every eye finally converged upon me. My cultivation at the peak true immortal realm caused more than a few to mock me. A mere peak true immortal dares to come here and throw his life away? The Lai Tian Alliance Master looked at me, his eyes brimming with contempt. Is this the legendary Jiyu Changqing? A peak true immortal is worthy of being called a heaven's pride? A chorus of harsh, mocking laughter erupted from beneath the platform. I stood my ground. My expression remained calm, without the slightest ripple of emotion. Xiao Mingyu was trembling with rage. As she moved to confront them, I patted her shoulder. I signaled to her, "Do not be hasty. The first to ascend the platform shall be the great Earth Hound." It revealed its true, majestic form, and leaped onto the stage. The Liet Thien Min Alliance dispatched a master at the seventh heaven of the upper immortal stage. Just as the expert drew his sword preparing to strike, Dai Tokao swung a claw with lightning speed. Before the man could even react, he was sent flying. He crashed off the stage, coughing up blood, unable to rise again. The entire arena erupted in an uproar. No one expected the demon emperor to possess such strength. The alliance leader of Liet Thien Ming turned ashen and waved his hand. The second opponent took the stage, a master at the eighth heaven of the upper immortal stage, wielding a dark blade and emitting a sky-covering murderous aura. But Dai Tokao simply swatted him away with a single claw. The man swung his blade to defend, but both he and his weapon were struck aside, sending him plummeting off the stage, unconscious. The crowd exploded with gasps of shock. The demon emperor's power was truly terrifying. The alliance leader of Liet Thien Min stood up, his face grim, and stepped into the arena himself, unleashing the full pressure of a half-step golden immortal. Sensing the immense pressure, the fur on Dai Tokao's back stood on end, yet it remained motionless, standing its ground. I looked towards Su Shaoxuan and gave a slight nod. She subtly stepped forward, appearing as if she were offering an elixir to Dai Tokao, but in truth, she flicked her fingertips. A fine, colorless, and odorless powder was released, drifting with the wind toward the Liet Thien Ming alliance leader. It was a specialized poison she had refined herself, designed to target those of high cultivation, invisible and undetectable. It causes the victim's spiritual energy to gradually stagnate. The alliance leader of Liet Thien Min remained completely oblivious. He sneered and strode toward Dai Tokao, unleashing a palm strike, which Dai Tokao lunged forward to meet. A thunderous boom echoed as the entire arena trembled. Dai Tokao retreated several steps, blood trickling from the corner of its mouth. The alliance leader of Liet Thien Min also stepped back. His expression shifted slightly. He sensed that his internal spiritual energy was not circulating correctly, but he dismissed it, assuming it was simply the recoil from his own powerful strike. He attacked again, thrusting another palm toward Dai Tokao. This strike was even more powerful than the last. Dai Tokao gritted its teeth to endure the blow, forced backward once more as its injuries worsened, yet it remained steadfast on the stage. Su Shaoxuan looked toward me for a signal, and I nodded, confirming that the time had come. She silently flicked several more clouds of colorless, odorless powder toward the stage. As the alliance leader of Liet Thien Min unleashed his third palm strike, suddenly he felt the spiritual energy within him stagnate. The power of his palm strike diminished drastically, easily blocked by the great earth dog. His expression shifted as he realized he had been poisoned. He roared in fury. "To think you would resort to poison!" Below the stage, a commotion erupted as members of the Lai Tian alliance surged forward, intending to surround him. Xiao Mingyu drew her sword, ready to charge. Chen Shuyan also prepared to intervene. I raised my hand to stop them, stepping forward myself. With every step, I ascended the martial stage. All eyes were fixed upon me. The master of the Lai Tian alliance glared at me, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The coward has finally crawled out of his hole. I stood directly before him. My expression remained calm, yet a surge of heat suddenly erupted within me, as the spiritual energy accumulated from the system's check-in rewards burst forth at this very moment. My cultivation base instantly surged from the peak of true immortal to heaven immortal. First heaven immortal level, second, third. My rank climbed rapidly, only coming to a halt at the third level of heaven immortal. The entire arena fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stared with widened eyes. It was unbelievable. A single leap to the heaven immortal realm? What kind of monster was this? The Lai Tian alliance master was stunned, but he quickly sneered. "So what if you are at the third level of heaven immortal? I am a half-step golden immortal. What could you possibly use to fight me?" I raised my hand, and a sword manifested within my grasp was the world-breaking red blade that Xiao Mingyu had planted in the martial arena. In the lower realms, it possessed peerless power, but in the spirit realm, it was no better than scrap metal. Yet in my hands, it was entirely different. I unleashed a single strike, and the swordlight obscured the heavens. The master of the Lai Tian alliance's expression changed in terror. He raised his hands to defend himself, but his protective divine light tore like thin parchment before the sword's aura. It shattered instantly, and his body was sent flying backward. He crashed at the edge of the stage, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood. His eyes bulged, filled with utter disbelief. A half-step golden immortal had been sent flying by a heaven immortal with just a single strike. What kind of monstrous sword technique was this? I gripped the world-breaking red blade and advanced toward him. He struggled to crawl up. "This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Dare to touch my disciple and see if you know who I am? Kill me, and the Lai Tian Alliance will not let you off easily. Let the Lai Tian Alliance come. I will slaughter as many as they send." A glimmer of despair flashed through the old man's eyes, before he suddenly erupted into a crazed, piercing laugh filled with resentment. "Do you think the Lai Tian Alliance is the true mastermind? We are nothing more than pawns, risking our lives for others. The real antagonist is waiting for you in the shadows. One who has reached the pinnacle after 10 millennia of cultivation in the mortal realm, has touched upon the taboos of the spirit realm. There are those who do not wish for you to survive." I frowned and demanded to know who it was. The old man opened his mouth to speak, but suddenly his body stiffened, his eyes bulged, and a sinister black mist surged from within him. He let out a blood-curdling scream before his entire body disintegrated into ash, leaving not a trace behind. The platform fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was stunned. At that very moment, the sky suddenly darkened. Black clouds surged, thunder roared, and a colossal phantom manifestation appeared amidst the clouds. It was an old man, his features obscured and indistinct, yet the aura he emitted was terrifying to the extreme. The entire Heaven's Pride platform trembled, and countless people knelt to the ground in terror. The phantom gazed down at me, his eyes sharp and cold as if they were tangible, exerting a pressure that made it hard to breathe. He raised his hand, and a massive palm, blotting out the heavens, descended from the clouds toward me. Xiao Mingyu screamed, attempting to dash forward to save me. Su Xiaoxuan and Chen Shuyan stood pale as ghosts, drained of all color. The great earth dog revealed its true form, shielding me. I looked up at that giant hand. My heart was strangely calm. I have waited 10 millennia. Finally, the true culprit has revealed themselves. As the giant palm descended, the entire Heaven's Pride platform shook violently. The ground cracked open, and countless people were so frightened their limbs went limp. Xiao Mingyu cried out, rushing toward me. Su Xiaoxuan and Chen Shuyan also exerted their full strength to push forward. The great earth dog manifested to block the strike, but the pressure exerted by that hand was overwhelmingly immense. They had barely taken a few steps before they were pinned down, unable to move a muscle. I watched as the palm drew closer, my spiritual energy circulating violently within me. Yet it seemed entirely futile. The peak of the golden immortal realm, a state far beyond my current cultivation. The gap between us is an entire major realm, as vast as the distance between the earth and the heavens. Just at that moment, a voice suddenly echoed within my mind. System alert. Host is facing a life or death crisis, unlocking the final sign-in reward. Will you proceed with the self-sign-in fusion? I was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. After 10,000 years, this wretched system has finally decided to be generous. As the fusion began, a terrifying surge of power flooded my body. A force so warm and boundless, it felt as though the heavenly Tao itself had descended upon the mortal realm. I could feel my cultivation base ascending with frantic speed. 4th heaven of the upper immortal realm, 5th, then 6th. In the blink of an eye, I shattered through to the peak of the upper immortal realm. Then, with a thunderous roar, I tore through the final barrier. 1st heaven of the golden immortal realm, 2nd, 3rd. My power soared relentlessly, only coming to a halt once I reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. The spiritual energy within me surged like a vast, endless ocean. It was countless times stronger than before my ascension. I raised my head to look at that hand, which threatened to shroud the heavens. With a casual wave of my hand, a beam of golden light erupted from my palm. Against this golden radiance, the hand that had blocked the sky was as fragile as paper. It shattered instantly, dissolving into a myriad of drifting light particles. The phantom, hidden within the dark clouds, let out a cry of alarm, his voice trembling with utter disbelief. How is this possible? You were clearly only a true immortal. I took a single step, rising straight into the heavens to stand face to face with the phantom. The old man's face was withered, his eyes wide with terror. He stared at me for a long time, his lips trembling. The origin of the heavenly Tao. How do you possess the origin of the heavenly Tao granted by a sign-in? Do you have a problem with that? His face turned deathly pale, and he turned to flee. I pointed a finger, and a bolt of golden light shot forth. The old man let out a wretched scream as his entire body disintegrated into nothingness. Not even a trace remained. He was completely erased from the world. The sky finally cleared, and the gentle sunlight shone down once more. It was so warm. But how could I bear to look down at the earth below? Xiao Mingyu and the others remained rooted to the spot, staring up at me, their eyes filled with shock and awe. I slowly descended to the ground and walked before Xiao Mingyu. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed and her lips trembling, until finally, she spoke 2 words. Master, a call carrying the longing of 13,000 years. I reached out to stroke her hair, and she threw herself into my arms, weeping bitterly. Su Xiaoxuan also rushed over and held me in a tight embrace. Chen Shuyan stepped forward and bowed deeply. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her voice choked with emotion. The great earth dog transformed into his human form and prostrated himself on the ground. Old tears streamed down his face, while my disciples, Song Qinglan and Shu Moxuan, remained in a daze. Standing motionless on the sidelines, countless people in the surroundings knelt down in unison, as various powers of the spirit realm paid their respects. The heavenly prodigy platform fell into a deathly silence, only for a thunderous uproar of shock to erupt a long while later. Someone shouted, "This is the peak of the golden immortal realm!" Others cried out, "It has been tens of thousands of years since the spirit realm last saw a golden immortal," and others still roared. "The name Ji Changqing shall be etched into the annals of history." I patted Zhao Mingyu on the back. She looked up at me with a tear-stained face, and I wiped the tears from her cheeks. She nodded, trying her best to suppress her sobbing and hold back the tears. Su Xiaoxuan kept clinging tightly to my arm, refusing to let go, pouting as she said, "Master, you scared me to death just now." Chen Shuyan stood to the side with an expression of immense agitation, while the great earth dog stood up abruptly to keep guard by my side. At that moment, the sound of wind being torn apart came from the distance, as dozens of streaks of light plummeted toward us. These were the rest of my disciples who had finally arrived. Among them were men and women, both young and old. Everyone possessed an incredibly powerful aura. They had all attained the realm of the superior immortal. They landed before me and knelt down in unison, crying out, "Master!" As I looked at these familiar faces, a wave of warmth rose within my heart. The 100,000 years spent in the lower realm were not in vain. Every single one of them had now become a formidable grandmaster. I waved my hand, signaling them all to rise. They stood up and gathered around me. They vied to speak, each recounting the events of the years gone by. Xiao Mingyu leaned close to me, gripping my sleeve tightly as if fearing I might vanish again. Su Xiaoxuan squeezed in on the other side, her face full of triumph. Chen Shuyan stood by with a smile, while the great earth dog, in his human form, remained on guard nearby. Song Qinglan finally regained her senses. She stepped toward me, her gaze filled with complexity, and whispered, "Qing no, Ji Yu Chang Qing, how many more secrets are you hiding?" I chuckled and replied, "None left. I have revealed everything." She cast a sidelong glance at me. Tu Moxuan suddenly fell to his knees, clutching my legs as he wept. "Big brother, please, take me as your disciple." I kicked him away and told him to be gone. Laughter erupted from the surrounding crowd. The atmosphere was truly lighthearted and warm. I do not know when Yufu had arrived, but she stood in the distance, watching me with eyes filled with complex emotions. She stepped forward and offered a gentle bow of respect. "I never imagined that you were truly Mingyu's master. Thank you for taking care of the child all this time." "No, it is I who should thank you. You are the one who saved the entire Tiangang sword sect." Xiao Mingyu gripped my hand tightly. "Master, from this day forward, you are forbidden from leaving me again." "Very well," I said, patting her head and promising that I would go nowhere. She smiled, tears still glistening on her cheeks, but her expression was radiant. Su Xiaoxuan moved closer. "Master, I want you to pat my head as well." I laughed heartily and patted her head. The other disciples rushed over to surround me, some clamoring for a head pat, others asking for a hug. The scene was somewhat chaotic, yet immensely heartwarming. Looking at these disciples, I felt a sense of peace like never before. After 100,000 years of lonely waiting, at this very moment, everything has become worthwhile. Song Qinglan stood to the side, watching with envy, and muttered under her breath, "How wonderful that must be." I heard her clearly. I beckoned her over with a wave of my hand. She was startled for a moment before stepping closer. I patted her head gently. "You have worked hard these past days." She blushed, lowering her head and remaining silent. Tu Moxuan whined from the side, "I want one too." I immediately kicked him, flying into the distance. A burst of laughter rose again. The sun began to set, casting twilight across the earth. Yet the Heaven's Pride platform remained extraordinarily lively. The various powers of the spirit realm had not yet dispersed, watching and whispering from afar. From this day forward, the name, Ji Yu Changqing, would echo through every corner of the 9 provinces spirit realm, but I cared little for such empty fame. What I treasure most are the disciples by my side. Xiao Mingyue leaned against my shoulder and drifted off to sleep. Over the past 13,000 years, the child has been far too weary. Su Xiaoxuan hugged my other arm tightly, nodding off in her sleep. Chen Kangyan stood guard to one side, while the great earth hound shifted into its true form, resting not far away. The other disciples gathered around to form a circle. Watching this scene, my heart felt truly warm. Waiting for 100,000 years, what I finally reached this day was not the thrill of being peerless under heaven, but the warmth of having you all by